Good morning, everyone. Just waiting to see if we're actually picking up live on Substack.
In case we are, good morning,
Good
everybody.
morning, everyone. My name's Nick. This is So, my special
Hi.
co-host, and our special guest today, Dana DuBois, who is
Hello.
joining us from Gen Xe, and is going to help us talk about the rise of parenting during fascism, or the rise of fascism during parenting,
Yes,
be
I think
more appropriate,
I think that's more it.
and how
Hi,
we can
Nick. Hi,
deal with it
Sosa.
as kids.
Hi, Dana. Hi, Nick.
Oh, look at that. Oh, good morning. Let's introduce ourselves too. Soso, can you please, because not as many people have met Soso yet. She is my amazing co-host for the day. She and Kat run a psychologist show, talking a lot about mental health and some really cool stuff with Dr. Litton a lot, Tuesdays and Thursdays most weeks. And if you haven't joined them, they're amazing. But Soso, can you introduce yourself a little bit more? And I'll even put up.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. Nick, I love your show. I just love the fact that you're getting poetry and as well, you're talking about such important topics. I should say to everyone, I am based in Quebec City, Canada. So for me, I got on Substack right after Trump was elected. And you should wonder, okay, why?
Hooray.
What am I doing? I'm in Canada, but I do care about what's happening. I feel like our whole planet, I don't want to say it's on fire, but I feel compelled to speak out and to reach out. Honestly, I'm like, okay, it's not true. Not everybody in the States is like this crazy maniac. So I mean, I'm so glad I'm reaching out on Substack, meeting incredible people, very sensitive, warm, intelligent, and I'm like, okay, you guys are going to be winning this. It's just, you have to feel the support, from the rest of the world. And we're so close, we're neighbors. And so, yeah. And about quickly, our show is more like we're trying to set it up and still, learning. And we're, we,
Uh-oh.
oh, that's okay. Well, quickly, I do it with Kat, and it's usually on Tuesday and Thursday. I'm not a psychologist anymore. I have to mention it because it's a reserved title here in Canada. But I do have experience. I have a master's in psychology. I practiced as a psychologist for 7 years, and my specialty was especially children and teenagers. And young adults. So I think it's more than relevant because I do have also a daughter, 16-year-old. So, and also three, well, older in-laws. My husband has three grown kids. So yeah, lots of things to talk about. So there you go. That's it.
Which is perfect. Thank you, Sosa, for introducing yourself. And that's one of the reasons I brought you on is you have kids. You have a psychologist background
Yeah.
and training, and child developmental psychology right now is very super important, especially as we start heading back to the school year for most of us in the
Yeah.
U.S. Our kids. I know my kids start school this week.
Oh,
Oh,
It's earlier
Seattle.
than a lot of places, but we tend to start ours early and end really early, um,
Yeah.
for the planting, and then we break right around harvest. So if most people don't know, the U.S. is based around an agrarian system. So all your schools, depending on where you start, are based on the planting and harvesting times of your farm societies. So like
mm,
Seattle starts a lot, like Washington schools start a lot later and end a lot
Yes.
later because their planting window is like 6 weeks or like,
Yes.
and that's about it.
Yeah, Seattle is always one of the last to start and one of the which is like yay, but then we're also always one of the last ones to end, especially if we have snow days, which are rare but happen, or if we have teacher strikes, which are becoming increasingly less rare.
mm,
Um, because the
Mhm.
teachers' unions are always negotiating. And we had one year where where there was a question of if we were going to go past 4th of July weekend. I think all the parents were like, if you do, my child's not coming to school. Like,
I do
fuck all.
remember some long school years like that.
Yes. Like,
So with that lovely start, this is our beautiful Dana DuBois. She's an amazing friend from the Gen Xy show, Pink Hair and Pronouns, all of the things. I'm going to switch over to Dana's personal.
oh God, did you
Ooh,
take a
look at
photo of
that.
me?
Look at that.
Okay. Okay.
I stole your user icons and
Yep.
it's like,
Totally fine.
take those and use those, and you guys look so good in them. Like, I love it. It's
Thank
amazing
you.
how awesome this is. And
I'm amusingly,
her,
that's just a photo I took with my phone in a cafe. It was really nice natural light, and I think a friend of mine photoshopped it a tiny bit because that one went up with a nationals. Like the first time I got published nationally, it was on today.com, and I was like, help! I don't know how to use
oh,
Photoshop. Make me look slightly younger and better. Let's
oh, that's
try.
amazing. Well, Dana, do you mind introducing yourself? I know we've been here for a couple minutes already, but do you
Not at
mind introducing
all.
yourself for us?
Not at all. I am Dana DuBois. As you graciously said, I am 50% of Gen Xy, which is a publication I run with my best friend in the world, Lawrence Winterman, here on Substack. And we focus on culture, politics, and community through our wry, Nazi hating, feminist, queer allies, or outright queer selves. And we run a podcast called The Daily Whatever, which is an auditory continuation of what we have started as writers. I have been can I make a t-shirt? Maybe Lawrence could, that says I was a content creator before content creator was a career. I started back in the early aughts. I launched a music publication called Three Imaginary Girls here in Seattle that focused on the local indie music scene with another best friend named Liz Riley Tollefson. From there, I had some kids and took a break from writing on the internet, but launched on Medium a couple of years ago where Three Imaginary Girls lives, and also a publication called Pink Hair and Pronouns, which focuses on parenting gender non-conforming kids. I love Medium. I'm using past tense. I still sort of love it, though it's not the same, but I am a Boost nominator over there. I run 3 publications if you include Gen Xy, because we have a small presence there as well. And I love memoir writing. I'm passionate about storytelling and how it moves the world. And what else? I have 2 beautiful teenagers, 15 and 17. So yours is right in between mine. So 2 daughters. My youngest is now identifying as she, her, or she, they again. So daughter is okay to say. And we live in Seattle. So I hope I have interesting and useful feedback here today, because some of my feedback may just come down to like, you got to live in a blue state or a blue city and have
You
some
know,
protections if you're still here in the US.
that's okay. I think for me anyways, it's less because I know the idea of moving and like that's one of the big things a lot of people talk about is like if you can move, if you can move out of red areas, and I want to counter that a little as like conventional wisdom and logic is if we move out of all these areas, they just become worse and they just become darker and redder and meaner and nastier. And whereas if we come into these areas and we attempt to we don't become the culture, but we bring ourselves to the communities. I think we'll find a lot of reception that we're not used to because there's a lot of people in these areas. Just to buck that trend is I think there's a lot of people in these areas who, because I live in a red area, who are much more progressive than we think.
Sure.
And that being said, that does not offer protection for our kids. Like that's not a protection for your kid in any way. That's an adult thing.
Yes.
Like I want to make sure I separate. Like me being in a red state is not a protection for my kids. In fact, my daughter is worse off now than she was when we lived in Washington State. So we've gone from a state where my daughter had equal rights and my wife had equal rights and equal treatment to a state where we don't. And
Yes. I continue.
yeah, and it's been an adjustment we've had to make because I have to be much more hyper aware, and my wife has to be much more hyper aware of what's going on, and teaching our daughter how to safely guard herself and
Uh,
safely interact with the world. Um, oh,
Yeah.
that's not what I wanted. There, make us bigger.
There.
And um, I so from a parenting perspective, I think it's okay to stay where you are. Um, but at the same time, you have to remember that you are going to possibly do damage to your kids by doing that. So I guess sort of a question for both of you is because I live in a red area. Dana, I know you live in a very blue area, but you have very red people. You have MAGA people who live around you and who have made it uncomfortable to live there at times. Um, is what is your thought as a parent on um, on what I just said, actually, of staying in a red area? Because, like I said, we came somewhere from where we had equal rights to not, and so my daughter lost rights coming here, but we can't move away.
I have a lot of thoughts on that. The
Mhm.
first one that came to mind is um, there's things you do because they're politically right, and then as a parent, there's things that you do to make for the best life for your kids, and they are sometimes at odds. And I think as a parent, it is not just okay, but very normal to say, I want to do what's right for my kid, even if this maybe does harm on a bigger scale. If the best thing for you and your family is to flee the country to and you have the means to do it, don't take a sense of guilt with you for leaving. Like do what
yeah.
you need to do. Oh my gosh, I was about to quote Dan Savage. He's one of my favorite content creators, and he's a sex and relationship podcaster. He always says, do what you need to do to stay married and stay sane. And he's talking about infidelity sometimes. Do what you need to do to keep parenting and not just stay sane, but to help your kids thrive. I think that's okay. So, first of all, if you do decide to make a change like that, don't take the guilt with you. That's
Mhm.
number one. Number two, though, is whether you're thinking of like leaving the US or moving to a blue area, I want to acknowledge that it's an immense privilege to even be able to contemplate this. And I moved to Seattle back in the 90s as a young adult, and I grew up in Florida and South Florida, so it was like a New York suburb, effectively. It was not very rural, but I went to school in Gainesville, Florida, University of Florida, which is pretty rural, and then grad school in Nashville. Spent some time in Atlanta, so I lived in the South, and I knew how it didn't fit. But at the time, there weren't. I do remember thinking really like Atlanta, but it's in Georgia, and that's a red state. But I didn't feel fear around it. It was more like, ugh, I don't. It didn't fit, and so I chose Seattle because at the time, other than New York City and San Francisco, nearly every city felt accessible to me as a young adult with, a job, but
Mm,
not like a massive, like I'm earning zillions of dollars kind of job, just a normal job. Every city felt accessible. And I have a lot of theories about Gen X and how we migrated and built these cities and how we're now, a lot of us have left or are getting priced out of them and how generations behind us can't even consider them. So that's doubly so if you have a family. Like I am not just being blithe, like, well, why don't you just move to Seattle? Seattle is stupidly fucking expensive now. And most
mm,
of the blue cities in the US are. And I don't know of rural hubs that are liberal leaning. And there are parts of me, my kids are getting older. They're starting to get ready to take flight, which is, a lot of what I'll be talking about probably on this show, helping them make that decision in a time of Trump. But like, I have thought of like, hey, I could live somewhere less expensive. I could sell my house that I was lucky enough to have purchased 20 years ago, back when you could buy a house in Seattle as a working person. And I could go live somewhere and have less stress about money and work. But excuse me, in order to do that, that involves moving to a red area. And that is just, I can't move somewhere where I don't have bodily autonomy, even though I'm no longer of childbearing age. Like, still, women are not fully formed citizens. So I want to speak to the privilege there of like, I'm not being blithe and just telling you to move. It is
it's a life decision.
A big life decision, and one that there is the need for affordable housing and living is a political question, and one that like Democrats should really be taking on in a serious way, because these urban hubs are just rapidly becoming playgrounds for the rich and uber wealthy as income equality is becoming greater and greater. If I were 20-something-year-old me, I could never afford to move to Seattle. I mean, maybe I could if I had 3 roommates and da 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 da. But it would be a very different coming of age. And I picked the city in part because I was like, well, if I ever have kids, they'll want to live here. I grew up in a really boring suburb, and here I'm like, there's art and music and weird fun, and there was room for all of us back then. There were the Microsoft millionaires, sure, but like your barista and your bartender, they were probably in a band and they still lived in your neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore. That it just can't at this cost of living.
So thinking on that, because I know one of the things for like the biggest part of this is and what I'll take away, one of the big things I'll take away from what Dana was saying there too is it's prohibitive sometimes to move. It is cost prohibitive to move. Like, we're not going to come at this from a place of privilege saying that everyone has the ability to move. And even if you have the financial ability, you may not have the physical ability or some sort of ability to allow you to move as you would find the safest. Like Dana said, going to a bluer state is probably the best option right now as a parent.
If you stay in the States.
If you stay in the States.
And I realized, I'm sorry, I forgot one part of it, which is it's also really hard to uproot your life.
Yeah.
Because my family is considering this. My ex-husband, who is still my family, and we're amazing co-parents together. We have amazing in that we have a really good relationship. He is a dual citizen, U.S., Ireland. And
Ireland.
Yes. And
wow.
Right before the election, finally, the citizenship came through for our kids. And so 3 of the 4 of us are EU citizens. They can move to Ireland or anywhere in the EU tomorrow, and they can have a home there. I can't, but they can. And I believe there may be ways. My youngest is 15. Maybe as a parent, I could, if I did it, we did it really soon. We went there in April. We toured some colleges. I loved the shit out of Dublin. Like, it felt so comfortable. I'm like, I could move here. This would be great. And also,
gorgeous.
Yeah, my roots here are so deep, like almost 30 years in Seattle. The idea of it takes an immense amount of money, but it also just takes an immense, like, I moved so much as a young person and it was like, whatever, I'm in Atlanta, I'm in Nashville, it's not a big deal. Now, the idea of uprooting feels, it feels really challenging. So there is, moving one's life is not for the faint of heart, especially later in life.
Yeah. And so I want to get your opinion and thoughts and opinions on this too. But one of the things that Melissa was saying in the chat, we have Melissa Corrigan with us in the chat. She's an amazing friend of the show, and she had a really good question. or a really good statement was, we need to discuss how to build community where you are and not where we think we need to be.
Nick, can I ask
And
where the chat lives?
oh, you have
I
to
was-
join the chat in Substack.
I know,
Oh.
but where in Substack is it? Is it on? Because I didn't see it on Sick of This Shit.
It should. It may have taken a little while to go, but it
Okay.
should be there. I'm on the feed.
Okay,
Yeah,
maybe
I'm
it
gonna-
just was. Maybe it was just slow because I looked earlier and didn't see it, and I don't think it's hooking up to mine either. Oh, it does say live right now.
There is something that I've been listening, and it is very fascinating. What I have noticed, and I will tell you, I understand where Dana's coming from, because I am very lucky in the fact that I am from a very small town. Like, I was born in a small town, just French speaking, because my parents both speak, they both spoke only French. So, as you know, Quebec is mostly French speaking. And if you want to get out of Quebec, you have to learn English, because it's the main language of communication. And over the course of I was fortunate because my parents, even though, well, they had their limits, but they were both very open on the world. So my father would kept on saying to me, like, if you want to go and see things, you have to learn English, which I did. Like, I actually learned English at a very young age, even though my parents still asked me for help. So I think it's very important, no matter where you are, to be open to the rest of the world, because that will broaden your horizons. But I can understand if you're living in a poorer area where you don't necessarily have the means to travel, then I still think it's important to expose your child to books, movies, documentaries, to just make them travel. If they cannot travel physically, then at least they need to broaden their horizons. And if there is something, I'm not saying it's the same it is in some part the same in Quebec, but the impression we get of the citizens of the States, well, I'm obviously talking with you guys, so it's not the impression I have, but when I was growing up, it seemed like they were so self-centered. It's as if, they would go and ask, like, do you know who Tim Horton is? Like, who? Like, is like the prime minister or something? This is actually a chain of restaurant like Dunkin' Donuts, and it's all over the country. It's just like all these small details. Like, so I think that part of that is to be like, there are two things. You have to be there for your children, but if you cannot move out, there are two things. Sorry, if you cannot move out because of money, and by the way, something that I've also seen, because I do go to Europe, because my husband is originally from France and immigrated to Canada almost 30 years ago, and we met later on. So we are a recomposed family. But I do, and we were in Ireland last summer, by the way, for
Oh, nice.
so I saw Dublin, Belfast, and I see that this phenomenon of lack of access to the property, lack of feeling of discouragement in our youth. I find it's well, and it's certain. I haven't been in Asia, but it's certainly a Western, like, not problem, but it's a Western reality. And sometimes we look at our little navel, and it's like, okay, this is just us, but it's not. Like, you're talking about Seattle. Vancouver is the most expensive city
Yes.
in Canada, and you cannot own property there. I've been in contact with some people who actually are moving further away in the province because it's more accessible. I'm looking at my city where I was here in Quebec City, like some years ago, like 30 years ago. We had no big buildings. Now it's just, they are growing, like it's becoming so dense. So I think that first, the realization that you're not alone in your community to experience certain types of problems in terms of social economics. Like, I do have the same Same discourse from my teenagers. They're like, oh, it's so expensive. I'm not going to be able to afford rent. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, but when I was your age, I agree. It's not same price, but I did have a roommate, and we couldn't live on our own. So it's pretty much still the same. But yeah, it's true that, the rent, I mean, it's not the same as it was before. So
No.
basically I find that these problems are just, um, they are, like you were describing a community, it's bigger than just a small place. Now, how do you make it when it comes to your kids and protecting? And I find that the word, protecting your children is so important, because unfortunately, um, we are, and most parents know this, kids and even teenagers are sponges, right? They feel your emotion. It's like, ugh, it's like, so how do you protect your kids from your own feelings of anxiety, your own feelings of, it's so important to both give you the space to be worried and to deal with these issues, but to also sort of put I don't want to say a screen, like it's okay to talk about it with your kids, but also to protect them from, like your own sense of doom or, so, and I know it's easier said than done, right?
Mhm.
So those would be my two things, like that right away, like the conversation made me think of. So
So what techniques would you suggest to try and guard? Because so I'm a highly emotional person. It may not seem like it all the time. Like I can be fairly level-headed while I'm on here, but I'll also get amped up while we're on lives, and I'll go bigger, but I can get big. Like I can go 0 to 100. I can do all the things. I also live through depression and anxiety, so like my
yeah,
emotions are out all the time. Um, and as an adult that lives with that, and I know it seems like Dana, you're nodding your head along, so you at least understand where I'm coming from in this. Is what do you what have both of you, because you have older kids than I do, both of you, what have you both done to help not insulate your kids from your emotions, but to
mhm.
prepare them for those emotions, because now they're going to get even bigger in anxiety and depression in a lot of ways? And what were some of the things you used to prepare your kids for your own emotions coming towards them? Because like you said, they're sponges and they pick everything up.
Gosh,
You
do
want to
I?
go, Dana?
Yeah, I am trying to think if I have a good answer here. What did
And
I
it's
do?
okay if you don't have a good answer. Like that's okay too. Like not
Yeah,
having good answers is okay right now. We're all learning in all
right.
of this.
I don't. I didn't read a lot of parenting books, and I, I guess if I, my biggest, maybe one of my biggest parenting guiding principles is I answer any honest question honestly. And my kids, especially my older child, have come to me with some crazy ass questions. And maybe I answer them in slightly advanced ways for their ages, but I've always been really direct with them. And I, I have the advantage of raising them in an environment where the dominating ethos is similar to mine. Like I don't go into the school and assume that they are in danger from a bunch of right wing da 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 da.
Mm,
When my child was going through their gender journey a few years back and changed their name and their pronouns, I, they walked into school on their own and said, "Can you?" It was during pandemic. Can you change my name in Zoom? And I want to be they them pronouns. And it was like, welcome. They're like a third of the school is going through this right now. Like I can't stress how grateful I am to be raising my kids in an environment where I don't feel like we're butting heads with the environment. I do wonder and worry sometimes when they enter the real world, when they leave their family of origin home and city, if they leave Seattle, what that's going to be like for them. But I also focus on resilience a lot,
mm.
and that's a common theme in my writing and also in my parenting style. Um, so I hope that they are able to cope. They are pretty I talk to them about what's going on in the news. I swear a lot with them about what's going on in the news. I have from a pretty young age not hidden the world from them.
Yeah.
I I hope that has been the right path, and I'm trying to think of any other like big words of wisdom here. I don't know that I have any. I'd love to hear from you, So.
Yeah, so I wanted to hear on that too because I do a very similar thing. Is I think honesty is a first if it's an honestly intended question or they want the answer, I'll answer it
Yeah.
honestly. Um, and I think that's a great way to prepare them because you're not shielding them from truth.
Yes. Well, I do relate to you, Nick, because I mean, I was born into, as we often say, psychology is your calling because you were born into it, right? I mean, I come from a very, very dysfunctional family. Like both my brother and my father had major major illness, and also my grandfather. I mean, obviously, you know that it's you must know that most of it is genetic, right? And if you do go through life events, then that are adverse, you're most likely to have a trigger event that can sort of bring out those sensitivities. And so I have struggled the same, with highly sensible, and we've discussed this, Nick, in the fact that now I have fibromyalgia. So it's always been a struggle, to in my case, because when I was growing up, my father was just like explode, and I mean, he would break things, he would. It was really, really scary. So for me, it was very important right from the beginning, and I was lucky because I did study psychology, so I kind of used it a lot on myself first, and how to calm myself, and then so I do not, explode and like. And then it's very important to not let thing escalate, and when it does, to sort of like take yourself out of the situation and say, like, we'll talk about it later, and let me just process this, or just give me a moment. But it's very hard with little kids, especially because they do not have that attention span, so I find distraction worked a lot, like, and I'm saying, like, just on the moment, when things are getting very, very like intense, and how do you calm emotions down, and then you go back and you use your rational, and but it's easy, like I said, easier said than done. But I find that it's important to teach younger children to talk about emotions. What they use in school, and even with the social workers, and those little charts. Like you can actually go on the internet. You have those little faces, like. Especially when they're learning words, like, okay, how do you feel today? Like, okay, look, well, and different types of emotions. I mean, it's not just happy, scared, angry, like fear, worried. Do you know what I mean? Like those little pages, you have all the little emoticons, and then you have all the different emotions. So you kind of like teach them a range of, because, and then you kind of, you give them meaning, because it is true that um, first, there is nothing scarier for a child than to feel like you're losing control. Do you know what I mean? Like, the child doesn't understand, they're angry, so they have needs. So it's very important to tell them, like, if you're upset, like, you don't ask them, like, you're wondering to yourself, like, okay, what is the need that's not being met, and how, I mean, is it realistic to say, okay, right now, I mean, you want this doll that's like $40, but you can't have it because I don't have the money, or so. But how do you deal with the fact, like, okay, so you would like to have this doll because, I don't know, you've seen your friend at school who has the same doll, and so how can you deal with the emotions and say, and without like carrying them screaming out from the shopping center? Sometimes you see that. um, but every stage, I would first of all suggest reading, because learning is so important, learning about, like you say, child psychology. There are different stages, the terrible too is like they won't say no, no, no. It's like no, no, no. It's like, okay, wait, I mean, you want to be in control, but you can't, I'm the boss. So sometimes it's just like, but then it can escalate, and it's always a matter of how do you address the escalation and then trying to calm it down, because sometimes it's almost the reaction makes it worse, how the parent will react. So it's hard to be the grown up in the room, but I mean, that's when you're a parent. I mean, I find I don't know, maybe it comes with the feeling of responsibility. I mean, I don't want my daughter. It was clear from the start. I didn't want my daughter to go through what I'd gone through, like having to deal with that somebody was so. But I have to say, like, I did a lot of like, even sometimes, she can tell I'm not okay, but she's like, Mom, what's wrong? But I have to remember, she's getting older. She, logic started developing at around 12 years old. I mean, it's the, puberty, but then it's so different when they're little and at the not in high school. So again, like, I would suggest reading about the different stages of development. Nick, can you remind me how old you have because it's not also the same.
Yeah, I have a 12 and 9.
Okay, so is your
My
daughter
kids are younger.
12?
Yeah.
So she's getting to be a tween right now, right?
Yeah, she's in that pre-nager stage and preteen stage. So when we had you, what you were talking about, the terrible twos and stuff, that reminded, we called our kids three-nagers when they were 3, because they were worse at 3 than at 2. And they acted like little teenagers because they were walking around and they're like, no, I don't wanna. And that now that my daughter's nearly a teenager, I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of how it was back then too, wasn't it? I dropped in the chat to a link to in the Substack chat, a link to a thing called the Feelings Wheel. It's just a website. It's called feelingswheel.com. I had a friend at work who turned me on to this because she used it for herself. But I also go through emotional distress tolerance group therapy. I've gone through mindfulness therapy for a long time. Like, I've done therapy my whole life. For a while, I lived with a child developmental psychologist for a parent. So I picked up on this stuff when I was little. But then I like data dumped it all in college and when I was older, and I was like, I'm gonna be my own man. I'm gonna do what I want. And then I was like, nah, I don't need all this psychology stuff. I got this. And it turns out I didn't have this. So I put in the feelings wheel because you were talking about like how emotions are really complex and how they're hard to talk about at times. And I know I've used this specific website because it fans out in a wheel and it starts with your core emotions of mad, like bad, fearful, angry, disgusted, sad, happy, and surprised, like very common emotions. Do you think learning tools like this, even if they're like gimmicky like this, where they are easy to understand for ourselves, do you think this is a type of tool that we could use as parents, both for ourselves and for our kids, to be able to discuss emotions better? Because I know one thing men do really bad is discuss emotions. So not coming out of other men, but in general, we're really bad at discussing emotions. Do you think this would be a good tool for men to maybe invest some self-improvement time on, just to learn a little bit, just to be like, oh, I know how to use other words too. But then do you think this is a good tool to be able to teach our kids?
Dana?
Both questions.
I'm gonna let Sosa
I'm gonna
take
leave
that
this
one.
for you one more so because I want to see what your thoughts from a professional standpoint are.
Well, I can definitely tell you that what I remember was doing preventing, like teaching parents skills. Usually, I mean, back then, I remember like at community centers or, often I don't know how it works again in the States, but in community centers or at school. You have to be on the lookout also for, like maybe there are parenting skills workshops. But this is about parenting skills, but you're more asking about like using these tools for yourself first to learn like
Yeah.
words. For sure, for sure. I mean, I find the more vocabulary you have, the more you're able to, how could I say this? Not categorize, like, because right now I find that we kind of live, it's always, we have to remind ourselves, like, it's not all black and white, right?
Mhm.
If you're going into like, oh, they're bad and we're good, like, what about the middle? Like, what are the words that can, I mean, I do think that most things are on a continuum. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not just this category or this category. I mean, research has shown that what has caused and what causes the rise of fascism is people using categories, and not being able to make. Sorry, I'm still looking for my words, but maybe you can help me with that. But it's categories can be important when you're trying
Mhm.
to, I don't know, say it's blue, it's this, it's that. But when you're talking about subjective realities, emotions, thoughts, I mean, humans are fascinating because that is how most of our brain works. You'll make links, you'll make associations in your head, and often these words experience, they'll be associated with emotions. And I mean, what I think of when I look at the ocean will not necessarily, be the same as when you look at the ocean or you look at your crop. Do you know what I mean? Like, it is all associated with things we have learned. So when it comes to talking about kids and even teenagers, I find it so important to be able to, there's a word I would use, like relativity, like, you
You relate back with them and you try and build like a. Is that what
no,
you're saying?
it's more, I'm just kind of like, I find that when you use categories, it's like it's
Mhm.
easier to demonize,
Oh,
like,
yeah,
so this person and this person is that, like, and
yeah.
it's not, yes, I just saw, I got in the chat, expression is complex and vocabulary is your toolbox, and
Mhm.
it's true. If you end up generalizing, and that's another good word, and then it's like you're saying we're all the same or we're all different, and human beings are so complex. And that's why I find that when you start studying psychology, it's really the study of human behavior, emotions, and cognition. So it's the way you think, it's the way you feel, it's the way you act. But all of this, it's not just with yourself, it's with the rest of the world. So you kind of also have to be aware of your surroundings. So if you think of your state, Nick, and you're saying like, oh, we're living in a very red state where you feel like, my daughter has less, probably you're saying has less rights than, I mean, her mother did or her grandmother did back then. I mean, as a parent, I find that scary. But how, can I discuss this with my child without like telling her, like, kind of like, it's it's kind of like, how do you, um it is scary, but what can we do together to make it less scary, and what are your options, and what do you have to be aware of? It's like, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Mhm. No, I think it's perfect. It actually led to the next question that I want to ask Dana, um, which is actually around the categorization and the category part.
yeah.
Is we've gotten a lot into labels in society and labeling ourselves and putting minute labels on just on ourselves, but on others and our kids, and it's infected our library where we categorize ourselves, like Sosa was saying, into very very tiny little groupings that if you don't fit quite in, you're kind of out. At least in more conservative areas. If you don't fit in, there's very little room for gray in
Mhm.
those categories. And I know I was in the Seattle area too, and sometimes it's still just as black and white in terms of you're in the box or you're not in the box. With an older teenager who has explored who they are and been able to have more freedom of expression to come into themselves and grow into themselves,
Mhm.
do you find that your kids tend to use less labeling and less categorization than we do? Um, and do you think it might be something we could learn from them if they do? Or do you see it, or do they use more? Because sometimes we categorize ourselves a lot, and it so.
If I can just jump in quickly on
Mhm.
that one, Dana, because I know you're thinking about something, but I was just having this discussion last night with my husband, as how when they are teenagers, I mean, they're living, their whole life is school, or I don't know if they're homeschooled, but, if they go to high school and it's all about being with friends and trying to fit in, not fitting in, people are comparing each other, it's kind of like, it's full blown comparison. Like for sure, they'll try to, oh, I'm not in this category. Oh, I'm not with the cool guy, the cool kids, or I'm a nerd, or I'm this, or I'm that. I see that every day with my daughter. And I find that our teenagers, I mean, they're all trying to build their identity, and I mean, that comes to looking up to people you like, you admire, you want to be like them, or people that you don't feel like you're not the same. You don't want to demonize them, but it's like, okay, no, that's not me. And it's funny we had that expression, that conversation, because I was saying like, his um, his son is now 24, and I can tell you, it takes a long time, you know, to see our kids grow up out of this like um, categorization. Maybe you can tell depending on how they were raised, how they had a discussion, were you involved, were you supportive? And I can tell that you guys are, well, I'm getting the impression that you're very supportive parents. And just the fact that you're here, Nick, remember, wanting to discuss this about your kids, for me, that is a sign that you are concerned parents, and that is already a factor of protection for your kids.
So what do you think, Dana? Building on that, because you had that thought bubble going.
There are a lot of different thoughts going on there, and I will sum up. I'm raising daughters, one of whom has gone on gender journeys, 17 and 15, so a rising senior and sophomore. And yes, of course they categorize. I mean, that's part of coming of age, and it's part of making sense in a world, moving
Yeah.
through it. One thing that's come up in the chat a bit, I may be shifting the conversation a little.
Mhm.
Melissa brought up when I said resilience. She said that's a very Gen X parenting trait. And I do think and you talked so about the kind of traumas and of your upbringing and not wanting to repeat them. So I think generations are part of this always. So Gen X parents raising Gen Z kids. And I grew up with an explosive father also, and a really good mom, a bit of a passive aggressive, though non-confrontational childhood, and also more authoritarian, I think, than I certainly more than I raised my kids. I think that is a norm of a very early boomer, very late silent generation parent is you obey, right? Your mom
Yeah.
says to do something, you do it. And the way we're parenting now, people who are parenting teens and kids, there's a lot more permissiveness in the culture of like, how is the kid feeling and accounting for their feelings, making a lot of space. And I think that's better, of course. And I also think raising girls, it's doubly important. And when my mom comes to visit, she'll say things to me like, you're too permissive. She'll say this in front of my kids. And I've had to be like, please don't criticize my parents or my parenting
Typical.
in front of the children. You can
Mhm.
tell me whatever you want. But I know that she watches the way that my kids will have outbursts when they were younger. And I'd say they're just talking back to me now that they're older and doesn't approve. And there is still that part of me in my brain that's like, yeah, I don't love this, but you know what I've come to realize is it was it may not have been intentional at the beginning, but it was at some level, and it absolutely is now. Of I didn't come into my own until I was well into adulthood, like late 20s,
Mm,
as
yeah.
a woman, and still it's still evolving. It's still
Mhm.
hard. I want and need to raise daughters who are warriors to come into this world, and they sure as shit better question authority, whether it's mine or other people's, and doubly so as they're getting older, because sometimes they challenge me and I'm like, fair, you're right.
Mhm.
Mm, mm,
Or
Exactly.
and there are parents who still see that as disobedience, and this was wrong with kids these days. I strongly disagree, and especially if you're raising daughters, they need to know how to push back, because that's the future that awaits them here in the US. They need to know, they need to hear that their opinion matters and that they can
Mhm.
move the world, because they're going to have to. And I think that's the resilience that I speak of. And if they are going to move into red areas of the country, what I hope will hold for them of, um, you may not see women as equals, but I'm here to tell you, I don't care about that opinion, and that opinion is not something I have any tolerance for.
Mhm.
And Dina, you have a good point talking about raising daughters and mothers, but teenagers will look for role models, you know. So I guess when it we're talking about raising boys in like red, you know, MAGA, or the famous manosphere, like that's what I was
Mhm.
worried, you know, when I saw my
Yeah.
well, I'm saying my 24-year-old, but you know, I could tell like 7 years ago, like he was totally going into that wall. Like I was freaking out, you know, it's like,
Yeah. It's a
you know,
huge concern of, we
yeah.
we are raising, a lot of us are raising girls to be powerful women, but we aren't, I didn't make this up. We are not raising boys into men who know how to live alongside those women.
But it's so
And that's a
important
harder job. It's so
Yeah,
important. It is the
to
that
have,
crux of the problem. And
yeah.
that's I wanted to ask that a little bit too, and I know we're sort of running out of time, which
yeah, I
is
will need to hop right at 9 because I gotta
okay.
go
Yeah, no
get into
worries.
the whole workday thing.
No, real jobs, real people. Um,
We
is
bring all ourselves here to Substack, don't we?
we do is we've talked a lot about our daughters.
Mm,
Yeah.
Is we very very little touched on sons, on our sons.
mm,
I have a son, and
Because
I have a
I don't
son
have any.
who's coming into all of this and is at the age where no is a really hard word.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
Mm,
and I think it's vitally important that we not only teach our sons that no is a complete sentence
mm,
just by itself, like you don't have to say anything after no. We've been teaching our kids this for years is no, is you don't deserve an explanation after that. If people are willing to give you one,
right.
feel gratitude for it, but you don't deserve an explanation after the word no. And once it's done, it's done. Like somebody can say no to their body, and that means you are done.
mm.
Um,
For sure.
and I think I'd love to have you guys, or at least So back on that
Yeah.
one, and maybe see if there's any dad or
Yeah,
moms or dads out there who have sons who'd be interested in
for
coming on
sure.
the show too,
Yeah.
because
Raising sons.
they're at a really big inflection point, and we can't
Yeah.
forget the boys in this one because
No.
unfortunately, I think it's not we forgot the boys, is we get so hyper focused in the US. I find the US to be like an ADHD person. Is it's like me. I have ADHD and I get super hyper focused on something. We got so hyper focused on this idea that we left girls behind, because we did. We left
Yeah.
girls behind. But from the 90s on, my entire life, it has only ever been about getting girls education that is equal to boys or better. And we
Mhm.
did. We did it really well. And in fact, I think we did it so well that, bye, Dana. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so
Um,
much for having me. Bye, sick of the shit. It's fun to
bye,
be on
bye,
somebody
Dana.
else's
So,
stuff.
do you mind if you stay on for a couple more
Take
minutes?
care.
Dana, I'll make sure to plug your show before we go to again. Dana
Thank
from
you.
Gen XE, amazing friend. Thank you for coming
Proud,
on.
whatever.
The daily whatever.
Proud whatever.
Proud whatever. Bye.
Bye, Dana.
Bye.
Thank you. And so going back into that a little is like
Raising sons.
is we need to remember that we need to raise our sons just as much as we need to raise our daughters. Is we
For
can't
sure.
change the world. Walter said it really well. Is if you leave out Walter Ryan said it really well in a note the other day. Is if you leave out half of the population in, and he was specifically talking about women for this because it was if you leave out women from the discussion about DoD positions or like the military, you cannot have the best of the best because when there's challenge from everybody has to be there for it to actually be a real challenge, for you actually to grow and become better. And I think like I was saying, is we're so hyper focused as a society on one issue at a time that we went to the exclusion of little boys and kids. Because when I was in high school, it was only about teaching what we can do to help girls get equal education. Fine. It didn't bother me. My education didn't get any worse because of it. In fact, my education probably got better because of it. But then we went, now we're going to focus on girls are the ones who do math and science and the educations, and boys are going to go do sports. And that's it. That's what you're going to focus on, boys. You're going to go to college for sports. You're going to be this big, tough guy. You have to do all the manly things. And it's not okay if you go into the liberal arts or into an education degree or something along those lines. We have funneled boys and young men away from certain degrees, just as we've funneled women and girls into certain degrees.
Yeah.
As an education system and as a society. And I think maybe we should maybe we could talk again on a future episode of how we can help break that down and like get our kids back together where they don't see each other as like gendered competition in that way. And I'm not advocating for genderless society because I know there are genders, that each gender has a role that it plays in society. We're better at certain things biologically. We're also worse at things biologically. We're also better when we work together because we just make each other better.
And sometimes I find that you have also this whole, this whole situation where, social media, I don't want to blame it on social media, but, it'll definitely echo all those changes, right? And it will kind of make you like look at the situation, like what's going on with the famous manosphere. And, I am honestly, yes, I would love to have this discussion, and especially about raising son, because I don't have a son, but I have two, well, now say young adults that I have seen going through, and very different too. One loves languages, very much into like arts, drawing, computers. The other, what you're describing, lots into sports, like very different personalities, and also natural abilities, But what is this with, oh, you're a guy, you should go into wrestling or something? It's just like, what? Or as you were describing, like, okay, go waste your energy and do sports. Like, it's not just, yeah.
So awesome. I love that. And Shane, my friend Shane Urick is in the chat as well. He and I have a talk here at 1 p.m. Eastern time. We're doing a Palin talk. We do a weekly talk about Palantir and the rise of technofascism, which also plays a key role in a lot of this too. Is something I want to talk to you about is video games, and not the games themselves. I'm an avid video game player. I have nothing wrong with video games. The difference is I don't play video games where I chat with a whole bunch of people all the time, and I'm not on games like Roblox where I'm in somebody else's world or server and I'm in their mind and their creation. And I think we need to talk about games and like the tech field or like the tech influence on kids as well and what that might be doing to them. Just on a whole. So I'm gonna have you back. I'm gonna have you back again. This is
awesome. It would be my pleasure.
Um, so I don't want to keep everyone too long. We're a little bit over the hour right now.
Yeah.
Catching up for what we missed at the beginning to give Dana her time to come on the show and get ourselves all set up. So I'm going to close out the show. I'm going to give Soso a chance here before I do, though, to plug herself a little bit, and then I'm going to plug Dana again, and then we'll close out the show for the day. So Soso, take it away, my friend. I'm going to put your link back
Well,
up on the screen for anyone
thank
to
you.
subscribe.
Thank you, Nick. As I was saying at the beginning, I'm still kind of figuring out what I'm doing on Substack, but putting myself out there in a live is great as of now. We're trying to put together a show, Kat and I. My good friend Kat, I can't. Anyways, if you go on my Substack, you definitely see her name on my list of notes because we interact a lot, where we do discuss psychology, especially psychology and politics. But I am also on my end. I do love. That's why you see on my picture. I love traveling, the outdoors, the nature. I'm still, like I said, figuring out like. I want to do both, but right now it's hard because of time. But I do follow you guys, and thank you so much for having me, Nick. And I would like to say, Nick, you are a great guy. I'm astonished, but not surprised by your rise on Substack because you're such a sensitive person. I can tell. We have discussed our fibromyalgia together, and I think it's important to I think what you're doing is great. And I'm sure that what you're learning in doing this will certainly be a great help to you as a parent, for sure. And I would like also to just add, I'm a proud whatever in the daily whatever, so I am part of that small community too. So please check out Gen XY with Dana and Lawrence, and that's it.
And to segue into that, thank you, Soso, for coming on and being my co-host. It has been amazing to have you. I'm going to hide yours for a second, and then I'm going to bring Dana's back up because our daily whatever friends, Gen XC, Dana DuBois, Pink Hair and Pronouns, all of the publications she writes. She's on Medium. She's everywhere. She's amazing. She's fun. She has a lot of really cool stuff. And her and Lawrence Winterman have an incredible show every morning. Most of y'all know Lawrence. He's my co-host on a lot of shows, as well as the Wizards Council. And Dana is his co-host and best friend. And they are amazing. Y'all should come to the shows. They're every morning on weekdays and Saturdays, and it's so much fun to just come and hang out. They're an awesome duo. Please subscribe to them. And then finally, we'll move over to me and plug the end of the show is if you haven't already subscribed, please come on over and subscribe to us at Sick of This Shit with Nick. We're doing a whole bunch of cool stuff. We've got, as you can tell now, some really neat new backgrounds going on. Some show music to start and close out the show with. We are going to have some closeout music for the show. It's the same piece that we opened, but if you weren't here for the opening, you'll get to hear it. It's actually an original composition that I wrote when I was in college for a string quartet. So please enjoy that while we close out after everything. I'm going to start figuring out how to add like credits and stuff so it looks all professional and super neat. But that's for a couple of days. That's next week's challenge. We haven't gotten there yet. But I really just want to say, so thank you for coming on. We have an incredible set of shows this week. Sosa's been an incredible help for this morning. I cannot wait to have her back for more of these talks. I think things like this are really important, and it gives us tools as parents. Even if we didn't talk about a ton of specific minutia that you can do, hopefully you gain something from today in take care of yourself and then give your emotional energy in the correct way back to your kids so that you aren't exploding on them. Because remember, we're the adults in the room, and we have to act like it. Even if you don't want to be the adult in the room, you kind of have to be. But
take a break, get out, and then come back.
Yeah, go out, go look at the sun, as they say, go touch grass, and then come back. But I don't say go touch grass in a bad way. Like that's a really mean thing to say to people. Because that just means get the fuck out, go away. Is go touch grass. So, but seriously, in all literalness, go touch some grass, like go see the sun, and then come
Breathe.
back and talk to your kids. Let yourself get the emotion out, and then come back and talk to them as the adult. I've been there. You need to do it. Like we have to parent, and we have to do it in probably the hardest time we could have ever imagined to be walking into. So good luck us. We've been gaslit into this moment our entire lives, so we may as well just step up and do it. That way we can't be gaslit out of this moment, because I want my kids to have a good society. So to end this all out is thank you, everyone. Come join me here in about 45 minutes for a Palin Talk with Shane Urich. And then we're going to have some great shows tomorrow throughout the week. And we'll be bringing So back. I'm Nick. This is Sick of This Shit with Nick. We're running a summer special. So if you're interested in becoming a paid subscriber, please do. We're down to $1 a month or $11 annually for a forever price till the end of this month. And looking for some founding subscribers who want to come in to get a commissioned poem and a Sick of This Pod episode dedicated to your poem as well. But that's it, everyone. I hope you learned something today. I hope you all had a good time. I appreciate everyone being here. And don't go away yet after I say all this stuff. We're going to be on for 2 more minutes with some music to close it out. So you get to listen to a string quartet. But as I've been saying, let's stop being sick of this shit, y'all, and let's start doing this shit. So have a good one. Thanks, everyone.
You got this shit, guys.
Thanks, So. We'll see you again soon, all.
Thank you.